Hi, welcome to Ask the Manager. We haven't had Joe Ricca on for a couple of years, so it was time to have him back. And actually, for the time that you've been here, he hasn't. So welcome back, Joe.
Thank you, Donna.
Joe is a former member of the Board of Selectmen. In fact, he was on the board when I was elected 100 years ago. And he's a former town meeting member who was elected town meeting member at 18 years old. And he's a former Deputy Secretary of State, and everything's former. But he also worked as a senior advisor, if I have the title correct, for the Dukakis presidential campaign, Al Gore's presidential campaign, and John Kerry's. So,
It's like you're reading an obituary.
are you going to give us information as to what your plans are for the next group of campaigns coming up?
So I'm going to tell you, Ask the Manager on George Stephanopoulos, right? I mean,
Exactly. I told you.
By
Here
the
we
way,
are.
the last time I watched your show, I thought you guys were in a boat.
We were.
Okay?
And that was our favorite show.
Yeah. Two things. I didn't see any life preservers on the boat, A. And B, it looked like you were heading to Oak Island in a witness protection program or something. Visor over your head. I mean,
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
you know, I always forget the gentleman's name on the Lake Quincy Commission. He's a very knowledgeable, passionate guy. on
Yes.
that. What is his name?
I knew you were going to do
Peter Collins?
Peter
Peter
Collins.
Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been a town meeting member for a lot of years,
But
too.
he's passionate about the lake.
Yes, he is.
And, you know, after I actually watched that show, I was talking to our good friend Henry Graham-Petro. And my wife told me, Kevin, do you remember we were White City Amusement Park?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
My wife, as a young girl, she lived in Everett, and she said that people in her neighborhood would actually come to Worcester and Shrewsbury, rent one of the small cottages on the lake,
Really?
okay, because you had the Tacit Beach,
Yeah.
you had Sunset Beach. You know, White City Amusement Park was like the Central Mass version of Paragon Park.
Yep.
And they would actually vacation there.
Wow.
And if you still go on the lake today, you know, you'll see some very nice homes, but spotted along the shoreline, you'll see these small cottages that have been forever. Didn't a classmate of ours own Sunset Beach? Mul-
Sally Mulcahy,
Yeah.
her family, yes.
And
And they still own it, and they still run it.
And they really do.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to be here.
And we saw that. We saw
Yep.
Sunset Beach from the boat.
And if I recall, didn't the town have an opportunity to purchase Tacit?
Yes, they
for
did.
$96,000, and they turned it down.
And they turned it down. Just as they had the opportunity to get the Brewer estate and turn that down, if you remember,
Oh,
up on
that
Maple Ave.
That very stately building. I don't,
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yes.
And Kevin, I got to tell you, I'm a fan.
Oh, thank you.
And I got to tell you, I was very impressed with your history of the town as you came here. I mean, I'm listening to this guy. He felt like he lived here for 30 years. Neighborhoods, you know, understanding of past problems. I mean, really, I give you praise for that. I mean, that's a tough thing to learn. The mechanics of being a town manager, I suspect, are the same to some degree in every community. It's the history, the neighborhoods,
Yep.
the idiosyncrasy. So I don't know who gave you the crash course, but kudos to you.
Thank you.
He
I mean,
hit
I
the-
was
he-
embarrassed. He was naming things. I said, is he right on that? Yeah.
He hit the ground running, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, would you like to, well, first, I think before we do anything, we have to acknowledge and give great sympathy to the Worcester firefighters for their tragic loss of Lieutenant Jason Menard this week. That was just such a tragedy, and it's happened too many times in Worcester.
It has. Yep. Way too many times. Once is too many, but yeah, and just you know, a good time to thank our firefighters for what they do. Chief Vona runs a great ship, and yeah, we appreciate what they do, and we are offering support to the city of Worcester as we always do, to make sure that they can do what they need to do for the Menard family over the next few weeks and beyond, of course. But yeah,
I don't know how
Keep
you
it
come to
simple.
grips with that. And the irony was, didn't the Post Sox several days before announce they were retiring Worcester 6? Did you see that?
No.
Oh yeah. Well, the Pawtucket Red Sox came in. Now the Worcester Red Sox, and the team officials said they were officially going to retire Worcester 6 in commemoration of the cold storage fire and
Wow.
the 6 firefighters. And they were also going to, I think, isolate seat number 6. No
Oh,
one
wow.
could sit there.
Wow.
And then several days later, the tragedy. And I just don't know how you, for whatever reason, they're all tragic. For whatever reason, this one really bothered me. I mean, they all bothered me. And you know, I can't imagine that grief. But this one in particular, I don't know whether it was 3 young kids, you know, going to Disney World the next day. It's just unfortunate that it takes a tragedy like this for all of a sudden people acknowledge these guys run into burning buildings when most people are running out.
He went in to save other firefighters, first of all,
Yeah.
who were in there trying to find if there were other people inside. So, yeah, I can't imagine being that close to a flame.
No.
It's
Well, it's also
Terrible.
good to acknowledge, Kevin, as you just did, how lucky we are in terms of the level of service, fire and police, particularly fire,
Yep.
in the last few days. And I think sometimes we all sometimes take it for granted.
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
So we've started with that terrible thing, but let's talk a little bit about what the issues were when Joe was here more often and a resident of Shrewsbury. Well, you are a resident, but you seem to be everywhere. But to when you were on the Board of Selectmen, what do you think? The more things change, the more they stay the same?
well, there are common denominator issues, like Kevin's dealing with water. You know, he inherited a mess. And by the way, I applaud you. You didn't say I inherited this mess.
Yeah.
Okay, you took ownership, and it's going to come to fruition finally. But water was an issue back when we were on the board. I think the biggest one was, I don't know, I mean, a couple years before, I think we have a couple wells of Worcester Sand and Gravel.
Near Worcester Sand and Gravel,
Yeah,
the volatile
and-
organics.
Yeah, and you know, the ownership of Worcester Sand and Gravel were stockpiling contaminous materials, ignoring, you know, warnings from the town. I mean, back then, just as today, most people don't know members of the Board of Selectmen are water commissioners. Now, they always look at that as sort of like rate-setting authority. You know, I felt there should be more than that, if not de facto. You got a responsibility to protect your water supply. So we actually, it was unpopular because the ownership of Worcester Sand was extraordinarily popular. We threatened to take the property by eminent domain.
And also, we found at that time that there was a plating company
Yep.
on the abutting property, and also some sort of a camera, something to do with cameras. I can't remember the name of I'm still blank on the name of
Yeah, yeah.
there was a factory over there, and they used to dump
Dump.
the remains right into the brook in the back. And that was told to me by someone who had worked there years ago. And so that all, what do you call it, the way the water flows, it came towards our wells. So,
But I mean, that's always an issue. Infrastructure issues are always prevalent. They may change a little bit, development, but I don't
that's
know.
development with environment,
Yeah.
and making sure, which I think we're a lot more educated on the risks and some of what needs to be done. So it seems that the codes are more strict now to protect water supply and the environment in such ways that we don't have to deal with that. But in the meantime, we also have discovered the magnesium, manganese,
Yep.
magnesium,
Yep.
and the PFAS
Yep.
in the water. Now, I just want, in case anyone hasn't seen our other shows, to say that you've taken care of the first, and the PFAS is something that's just recently, in recent times, been detected because the testing is there now.
Right.
And now the testing is more accurate,
Advanced, yeah.
so we can see it's there, and that's from items that we use in our daily living, and things that probably we're going to be more sensitive to, whether it's cleaning products or water protection, fire protection.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so the PFAS, we don't have an identified source, but it is in a lot of different things that we use in our day-to-day life. We actually tested for PFAS in 2016, And the minimum detectable levels were just much higher at that point in time, and we didn't detect it. We think now that the science is much more refined and we can test at a lower level, we're down to less than 2 parts per trillion, which is literally a grain of sand in a swimming pool. That magnitude, we can identify that it's there, and we're taking action to pilot it. We've been working on that, and of course we're still working on the hexavalent chromium. We're going to be doing 2 really aggressive piloting programs coming up in 2020 to put a solution in place. And we want to be as broad as possible with that solution, because we know as the science continues to get better, it's likely that we'll find additional contaminants that are man-made or accumulative over the years that we'll need to get out. So rather than take a piecemeal approach, we want to be as broad as we can. I don't want to spend $5 million every few years to tack on a new treatment method. So be as broad as we possibly can with our approach.
Mr. Connie always used to say, when I would say to him, Dick, what keeps you up at night? He said, it's what I can't see on the ground. He said, it's the unknown. It's almost like Russian roulette. Okay, everything's fine. You're finding issues now that no one was even thinking about when the treatment plant was designed, built to address certain issues. So it's almost like whack-a-mole in some sense. But if this were a baseball game, Kevin, guesstimate, and we're in the 7th inning, is it accurate? Are we in the 7th inning? Or are we in the 5th inning? Or what would you say you are in terms of before you have confidence that the treatment plant is doing what was intended to do?
So
give most of the town, never 100% guarantee of clean water, but
so we know that it's functioning at 100% for what it was designed for. Unfortunately, these 2 things it was not designed for.
So does that mean capital adjustments to the plant?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at all sources. The state has actually identified this as a need across the state, and they're looking to put funding in place to allow us to access. I was in touch with Congressman McGovern's office at the end of last week just to try to get some information from them. The United States Air Force has done a lot of research into PFAS. As you know, at their Air Force bases, it was used a lot for firefighting operations, so just trying to get that information just to put us in the best, give us the best opportunity to take care of this as soon as possible. We also know that other towns that are treating for it, at Fort Devens, Air, Hudson, they're very successful in the treatment methods that they're using. So they're taking it from much higher levels than we are down to 0 in the finished water. So that's a good thing. Hexavalent chromium's a different story. We're not seeing that level of success in other communities on the West Coast that are treating for it. But we can definitely lower it, and we will lower it to 0 if we can, but I'm not sure if we can yet. So I'm really confident on the PFAS. It'll be expensive, several $1 million of treatment solutions that, then will take ongoing costs as well.
He's reminding me why I took chemistry pass-fail.
Okay. Yeah, me too, but, you got to learn what you have to learn as it comes up. So, but yeah, it's certainly a challenge that we're focused on.
And Mr. Connie also, when he was retiring, said one main thing that you have to stay focused on is the water. So I just think the more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's true.
The issues will always be keeping our water the cleanest possible.
I was talking to a couple of newly elected mayors. There were 3 state representatives this year got elected mayor. And actually, I was listening to the conversation, and one of my colleagues, Tom McShane, who was the Undersecretary of Environmental Affairs on the 4 governors, he said blocking and tackling, blocking and tackling. Don't lose sight of the basic services that people expect, demand, and want. 101 plowing streets, sanding roads, public protection. But you mentioned, some of the other historic issues. One was directly related to where we are right now. When the town awarded the municipal, or the cable license to the municipal light plant, because that was not a very popular issue. Back then you had some of the more big, giant cable companies like Times Mirror, Continental Cable was one, and there was Jim Baker was the light manager at the time, you know, he was his vision. Everyone thought he was crazy. What does a municipal light plant know about running a cable operation? I think the only community that was doing it at the time was maybe Wakefield. But that was a split vote, and the big issue back then was, should a town or city be involved in running a TV, the whole First Amendment issue? So that was addressed for a not-for-profit, but that was a 3-2 vote, a split vote on the board. And some people were vociferously opposed to, you know, do what you know best, run a cable. Now, Baker thought we were going to be selling the signal at some point in time and actually be in the cable business, but fast forward, if you look at other municipalities, their rates, local access, nothing stacks up to what we have. Reliability of service, you know, maintenance. But I think that was probably one of the most significant recommendations by Jim Baker, and B, his vision bore fruit to what we have today.
And we were both on the board when they televised the selectmen meetings for the first time, and it was a big deal. And
Well, a big deal. Meetings went from an hour to 4 hours. Like
Everybody
it was like the movie Ben-Hur. It never ended.
Everybody around the table had to make a comment on every single issue that came up. And that went on forever. I mean, it still happens to some degree on all boards that are televised to this day. Because otherwise, most people would just sit there and not have to be obliged to make a comment.
And the biggest thing that we're going through now with that, it's interesting that you bring that up because it makes me think, so we're now on the verge of shifting from cable, right, to internet, right? So cable, the video package is no longer the revenue stream. It's on the internet side of things. We have a lot of people cutting the cord, et cetera, moving to, you know, the internet as their primary source of, you know, incoming and outgoing communications. And I think that puts the town in such an advantage. One, it's a solid revenue stream, which, you know, therefore we're not trying to replace the cable as it goes away. You know, the internet is replacing itself. But from an economic development standpoint, and the way the world is moving with the Internet of Things, and the way we can use that idea, the Internet of Things, in the public sphere and protect our public infrastructure and understand our public infrastructure gives us such an advantage. I mean, you know, in every other community I work for, they never had, you know, in-house cable.
Look at some of the communities in Western Mass.
They don't have
Wi-Fi.
Yep,
I mean, they have to drive a couple miles to go online to do their homework assignment. That's mind-boggling to me today in 2020, but it's true.
Wow.
But even not having to work with, you know, any of the major cable providers that you see across, or internet providers that you see across, you know, I don't have to write a letter. I can walk down the hall and talk to Michael Hale and say, you know, how can we improve this? What can we do here? You hear towns across the nation, either in rural areas or even urban areas, that decide to take on the internet aspect because they want to control their own destiny. They want people to be able to work from home. If they're going to work from home, be able to work from home within their community, because it's an asset. It's a quality of life thing that is going to just continue to be more and more important as we move into the future.
I know periodically from time to time there was always some modest and limited discussion about selling the system. I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin. I would see that as a colossal mistake. We control our own destiny now. But is there an opportunity down the road? You think there could be a huge revenue kick? It would be one-time revenue, right?
Yeah, right. So I don't, honestly, on the cable side, on the video side, I think it's going away. I think that, you know, it will be a dinosaur rather soon. And, you know, the investment that the Selco Commission is moving forward with is in the internet side of things, which is, you know, the next and current thing that will continue to propel us into the future. So it's a big advantage to keeping it. Yeah. There was a little survey that went out about a year ago almost now with another major cable provider, and they kind of sniffed around and said, oh, you were right. No one's really interested in us. So that was good. You know, we like to see that. So that was a little scare last winter. So so it's good for the town.
Now, I also, while we're talking about cable and the light department, the response time in the service that we received and we currently receive in town is just phenomenal compared to other locations. I mean, you could be down in Florida and they'll say, we can get there in 2 weeks. And the light department will show up immediately or tomorrow, depending upon what's being requested.
Right.
So we're really spoiled in a great way by our light department, and it's well-run, and the people that come to your door are great people. Right. And so we're very fortunate for that. The other one topic that we should talk about is that when Pyramid came to town, we were all in sleepy Shrewsbury by comparison with our perception of what Pyramid was going to do to Shrewsbury.
Well, at the time, Pyramid was the largest developer of regional outdoor malls that were based out of Ithaca, New York. I mean, what they proposed, where right behind the Shrewsbury Children's Center behind Old Mill Road, we used to call it
Fairyland.
Fairyland.
Used to go play in Fairyland.
That was 100 specialty shop, 4 anchor stores, and that really divided the community. I mean, there were a lot of folks that were in support of that, primarily in precincts 1 and 7. They weren't directly impacted. And the mitigation that they were actually offering the town between cash, well, it was called mitigation back then. Others would call it a shakedown today. It was phenomenal. It actually exceeded the annual town budget. And they needed a zone change. In fact, you may recall, there was a young man that was attending our meetings. We thought he might be some young kid who wants to run for the Board of Selectmen. He was the regional site person for Pyramid, and they would hire these, Harvard B school grads. They would become a fabric of the community. They would get to know town meeting members. It was actually textbook the way they did it, and it was his job then to sell it. In fact, Kevin Byrne was representing Pyramid, probably rolling in his chair now when I said that. He was. I remember going to a meeting. I was asked to go to a meeting, and I did. And Pyramid would have this 6:30 in the morning call as to whether or not they wanted to increase the package. And Mark Mancuso was his name from Pyramid. I'm sure he doesn't watch your show. He had a decision, or he had to make a recommendation whether to offer $4 million more in cash, to the obscene mitigation package that they were offering. And he wanted my opinion. And I said, can't hurt. Now, he interpreted that as an endorsement, which it wasn't. Well, they pulled their proposal because they really weren't going to get 2/3. Then they shifted to the post office. And when the town decided we wanted the same deal, they left. But that would have been a game changer in terms of the complexion of that neighborhood. If anything would have had an impact on Spags, they would have.
And instead, we got the post office.
We got the post office, which they tried to close a few times.
Yeah.
But fast forward today, not to that scope, but your challenge is these, Fairlawn Mall, or those small little
Lakeway.
strip malls.
Yeah, like
Edgemere.
Drive-in. Yep.
Well, we got a solution for Edgemere, right?
And those were
Finally?
small. Those were all small by comparison.
Yeah.
In scope to what was.
Isn't Market Basket coming
Yep.
to Edgemere?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're in the still going through the planning board process right now, but it's real. It's coming to fruition. Good site plan. They've been before the planning board 4 times
Yep.
since July, and just continue to work through that process. And could be under construction, 14 months from now or so.
Actually, there was a serious proposal for Edgemere years ago, a water park, a theme park. And they wanted to put a water park in there, but because they realized it was going to be a short season, they wanted to augment that with 400 pinball games, freestanding facility. In fact, I think at the time the bylaw only allowed for no more than 20, I think the Town and Country Bowling Alley. And so while people were enamored with the water park, no one wanted, a slot parlor for little kids.
And now they have them.
And that went down. And now they have them. But there's always, and I guess if you're looking at other significant issues that would be unique to Shrewsbury, would be the Worcester Foundation for Experimental Biology.
Right.
And that was a research facility, Kevin, that I think was created somewhere in the mid-40s. And their infamous reputation was they developed a pill, oral contraception. It's on the site of Maple Ave where UMass Medical Center is now. And they proposed, late 80s, something novel called experimentation with recombinant DNA. Harvard University was doing it at the time. And why would that be of a concern for Shrewsbury? Because right around that time, this experimentation with DNA was coming up. People were unclear what it was. And Time magazine, I remember this, had a cover on Time magazine and had a hand holding a test tube, tinkering with life, experimentation with recombinant DNA. And the neighborhood was up in arms. And you may recall the foundation, as dynamic as they were for scientific research, operated in almost a cloak of secrecy. And all of a sudden people realized, are they creating life forms? Are they experimenting with viruses that could...
What's happening in there?
What's happening there? So the town asked if they would be willing to create a biohazards committee that would allow the town, along with some talented people that are residents. You certainly, you've seen firsthand in 2 years how much talent this town had as a volunteer base. And they resisted. You know, when you're young and aggressive like I was back then, now I'm slow and old. I was on the board, and Dr. Malin Hogan, who was the international expert on recombinant DNA experimentation, he wrote this book called The Roots of Life, which was at the time the treatise on DNA experimentation. So he asked me to come to his office, and I did. And he said, young man, I was a young man back then, he goes, why don't you do yourself a favor and read this? And I said, I will, Dr. Hogan. He goes, because you obviously don't know much about recombinant DNA experimentation. So I then sent him a book on community relations. I said, I'm going to read your book, only if you read mine, because you obviously know nothing about community. Well, I think Bob Jakes was the health agent at the time, and he really pushed, look, you got to be more transparent. No one was trying to stifle, you know, scientific, progress and research. But you know, in your different venues, you do something in secrecy, whether you're a board of selectmen. I mean, that's that's going to catch your attention as a manager or anybody else. And they finally relented. But the foundation had a team of research scientists that were international. I mean, they had the best and the brightest there, and I think they finally lost some NIH funding, and I think UMass took it over like in the mid-90s. But, you know, they're always unique. Every community has a couple of unique issues that are probably not the norm. But that certainly was one.
And then Wheelabrator.
Yep.
Coming on board with Wheelabrator. And
Well, the big decision there was we had an opportunity to have the incinerator in town,
right.
and people said we can have it both ways. We can, you know, take the ash and make money and let Millbury have the, I don't know if that was a good decision or a bad decision. I don't know. I don't know enough about the industry, but if you were faced with that decision, now would you take the, I mean, taking an incinerator sounds good from a cash, but there's obviously collateral NIMBYism that goes along with something like that.
Yeah. No, I never heard the incinerator was potentially going to go within town, so that's interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, so I've looked at, Millbury gets they get some benefit from having it there, but it's probably, incremental. I wouldn't think we lag too far behind them from having the benefit of the ash going here. And now we're really kind of nearing the end of capacity that's on that site. We're within the last 10 years of the remaining area where ash will continue to be able to go. And I know Wheelabrator is, invested a lot of money in the metals recovery facility there, which is very interesting. They pull the metals out of the ash which gives it some more life. But it's a major revenue source for the town. It's about $1.5 million a year. So it's, it's pretty significant almost.
And we've gotten probably, at least to date, a good 20 years beyond with storing the ash, because I can recall thinking, all we talked about was, we only have 20 years, and what are we going to do when that revenue stops? And that had to be more than 20 years ago that we were having those discussions.
Yeah, well.
So,
I mean,
and here we are, we're still accepting ash.
Yeah, fast forward. I mean, try and get a solid waste disposal permit. It's like an altar boy getting onions with the Pope. You can't get them.
Yep.
Okay, and every year, the Solid Waste Management Committee has goals to let's enhance recycling, but at some point in time, the rubber's going to hit the road.
Right.
I didn't realize how much time we have left on the landfill.
It's about 8 or 9 years.
Really,
of
I
space
didn't realize it was that much.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can't you apply for a permit to go a little bit higher than the original? I mean,
I don't think they can go any higher. To be honest
max?
with you, I think they're at the max. It would take a footprint expansion. And there's no additional town land out there.
All right. Well, that's impossible.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, I know that, in your business, okay, everyone's looking for an opportunity. There are always so many limited opportunities. But I can recall a time, I'm dating myself, that the life expectancy of a city or town manager was like 5.5 years. It's not as volatile today, is it?
It's still rather volatile. I think if you walk out the door at Shrewsbury, well, there's a lot of stability in central Massachusetts, but I think that if you looked at it even statewide and then region-wide and countrywide, it would be 5 years would be precedent for any manager in any single job. Shrewsbury is certainly the anomaly to that.
Was that an attraction to you?
Absolutely.
In terms of the stability, not only of town manager, but department heads?
Yep, 100%. There's no question about it. I mean, you know, whenever...
He's the fourth, right?
Yep, the fourth.
Yeah, the Hitchcock was it?
Wilcox.
Wilcox, Connie, Magato, and...
Yeah. That's it.
Think about that, since 1952?
Yeah, that's right.
That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I mean, for a community, I mean, it's a huge attraction, right? Like, it's my career. It's something that I love doing on a day-to-day basis. And, I know myself and understood the community enough to know that we were a match. And I know that's still for me to sell within the community. But, I don't want to play politics. I'm interested in the well-being of the community and the residents and running the best local government in the world, to be quite honest with you. That's what I focus on every day. And there's challenges related to that, but it's not a short stop or a short hop for me. I don't have any other intentions. And it was something, I'm new to the area. My family and I moved here in 2011 when I took the Grafton job, but it became apparent to me really soon thereafter that Shrewsbury was a gem in the center of the state. And I had the opportunity to interact with, Dan Morgado and some of the other staff as we worked on relations in areas near, Centec Park, the sewer connections and water relationships between the two communities. So I got to know the community just a little bit at that time. And to be quite frank and honest with you, whenever I sat down in Leicester, that wasn't my answer because they asked me that, open session, are you going to be here forever? No, it wasn't my intention. And I was very honest with them. And feel that I brought great value to the community and, was there for 4 years. But the challenges, they're here, keep me motivated, the complexity of the community, the vibrancy of the community that's growing, and then the stability of the position, are all very attractive. So.
Well, you mentioned the stability at the town manager level. That's historic and unprecedented, other than maybe the city of Worcester. But you also you talk about politics. I look at the stability of, we'll start with the Board of Selectmen. I mean, there's been a couple villages that have snuck in there, okay? Make no mistake about that.
Yeah, we know a few.
I can say that you can't. But if you look at the incredible stability, I mean, the Paolo's going on 3 decades.
I know.
I think that's a plus. I mean, that institutional memory. I think Kane came from Marlboro, didn't he? He was Marlboro City Council for a while, Jim.
That's right.
And we're serving on chairing building committees. LeBeau, it's in his DNA. I served with his dad. And they leave the power. Look, there's always a little bit of elbow power, but by and large, historically, I've seen, it's a pretty stable political board that understands the Town Manager Act gives you so much authority, and they do other collateral things, but and then department heads.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many changes you've made. I'm sure you had to make a few because people are getting old, but between Morgado and Connie, the stability of department heads was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's
He
funny.
caught a lot of the retirements.
Did you catch all out of retirements?
Honestly, I was thinking about that earlier today. And I don't know if it's good, bad, or otherwise. We'll see in a couple of years. But I think that I may have made more new department head selections than Dan had the opportunity to the whole time.
Probably.
It would not surprise me.
We now have the library. We have an ongoing search for the library director and the council on aging director. And
Due to retirement.
Due to retirements, and we've had 3 other retirements. So that'll make 5 department head positions, and then we created a DPW director.
There's no way he had 6 while he was here.
I don't think so.
I doubt it.
Say that again?
There's no way Dan had 6 department head
Right.
appointments while in the span he was here.
Right.
And the treasurer collector since I've been here, because the former Carolyn retired while Dan was still here, but we appointed Lori Gaudet after I got here. So that will make 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's amazing.
yeah, it's interesting.
So now you'll have stability amongst those that you have now.
Yeah. You know, you talk about political instability. Other than you, 2 of the people I had the most respect for on the Board of Selectmen were Reuben LeBeau, okay, John's dad, who was to the right of Pluto, and Ron Gouch, who grew up reading the Bible. He said I read the Communist Manifesto when I was young, okay? But you know what? And I was a partisan Democrat, but there was never any discussion. I voted more with those guys because it's kind of like an umpire, right? Balls and strikes. I mean, it's no political gray.
I have difficulty understanding why national government can't be a little less partisan when they're all there supposedly for the best interest.
Donna, let me tell you something.
Of
One
our
of the
country.
benefits of having done these crazy presidential campaigns is you get out from under these, you leave Shrewsbury, and you see just how inefficient, corrupt, political. We're not talking about cities. I mean, some of these small towns. It's insane. Then you come back and you say, you know what? I thought I appreciated this. I didn't realize just how damn stable we are, how the civility. Plus,
Yeah.
if you look at polling today, given the chaos in Washington, more people than ever. They always had confidence in their local government, more than ever. The numbers are through the roof. A, they think they're getting a good bang for their buck locally, by and large. B, there's a certain civility and stability. And local government corrects mistakes sometimes. I mean, they just do. My next door neighbor, when he applied for a used car to sell cars, and he described he needed X and they only gave him Y, and then the planning board cited him for having too many on the lot. Well, he wasn't trying to do it flagrantly. He went to an auto auction. Gee, I'm looking for a Camaro for Kevin. There's one right now. I'll grab it for him. He's won over. They worked it out. So local government can correct sometimes. People feel they got a fair shake. Now how do you replicate that? Okay, you don't replicate that in the climate today. It probably in a lot of ways, makes his job easier because people have a lot of confidence. I'm assuming you have sort of a semi-open door policy like Magado had.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You see people every day. The Paulo seeing people at Shaw's. There's a better connection there. Now, if you're delivering on services, not every community is well run in Shrewsbury. We look at, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes looking at TNG. Some communities are violating open meeting laws. So there's problems, but I just think having traveled the globe here and then come back here, you realize, wow, this is pretty damn good. How do you retain people? Look, you got a DPW opening, and the city of Worcester is looking for something. I mean, is it difficult to compete with other cities in the Parks and Rec and DPW jobs? I mean, how do you?
It is. It's really difficult, especially in this marketplace. To compete and whenever there's not a lot of job opportunities and wages are up. We actually spent a lot of time and effort over the last 10 months and reviewed our classification and compensation schedule, and we found we were pretty far off in some of our positions, and we had to make some adjustments to stay competitive because we were having difficulty recruiting. And the personnel board, had historically said to town meeting, we'll let you know when there's an issue. Otherwise, we're going to stay the course with our compensation plan. And we really struggled to be able to attract the level of talent that we need to retain those service levels that you indicated and keep them here. That stability and the inherent knowledge you gain from the time in the position is what keeps that's the lubrication in the gears to keep it going. It's the people. So we do struggle. Shrewsbury has, our employees are moderately, to well compensated. We have a lot of good other perks that a lot of towns don't have in the sick leave plan and things like that. It's really unique. It's like a short-term disability. It's not abused. People recognize the value in it, but we have to continue to provide a mission that they want to attach themselves to. I think that's our biggest challenge going forward. As the town hall, as people retire and the town hall gets younger, they'll have many opportunities to go many other places, and they have to be connected to the mission and love the community like everyone else did, and that's how we'll keep them there. And we've focused a lot on that, and I think it'll take a long time. I know that Mr. Carney and Mr. Morgado ran things the way they did, and were very successful at it. I think that we need to change that. My vision is to change that a little bit, and how we approach the strategy across the organization, and what people can attach themselves to and see changes that they can influence throughout the organization regardless of what position they're in. It's going to take some time because it's a little bit different than either of them, and Dan made changes when he got here, but I think now it's time to pivot a little bit and keep the energy up, keep the vibrancy of the community up, and keep performing.
Is the cost of living here a deterrent to attracting people? I know there aren't any residency requirements for those particular positions, but nonetheless, human nature says I'd rather work as close as live as close to where I'm working is.
I think it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. It's not unattainable, but it's certainly more of a challenge than some of the other communities may have. But we have our fair share of employees that still live in town, either have for a while, or maybe moving closer. The quality of the schools and the demographic that comes along with it makes it attractive, and it's a good time to hire folks in that stage of their life. So we're happy as far as having the right mix of residents that are employees and non-residents. I think it's healthy.
So earlier today, I was with Tim Murray, and we were at some chamber issue with St. Vincent Hospital, which we represent. And Tim, good friend, he likes to talk about the success of the chamber. I think he's revitalized the chamber. But he and I have this ongoing difference of opinion that I understand you have a regional chamber, but first and foremost, you're looking for economic development in the city of Worcester. Mm-hmm. And I know that at one time we had an industrial development commission. It was dormant when I was around. Mm-hmm. I don't know how active it is now, but do you see that as a disadvantage? There are a few communities, I think Milford has their own chamber. Mm-hmm. Shrewsbury's now bumping 40,000 folks.
Right.
I mean, do you think at some point in time it would be prudent to have a conversation with the business community about we have enough vibrancy that perhaps a need to have our own, if not chamber, that's a big step, but maybe revitalizing the Industrial Development Commission? I just firmly, I said to him, in all due respect, you wake up every morning and saying, how can I put a business on Shrewsbury Street? Not, Boston Turnpike on our side. I mean, is that a challenge that, right now, that pretty much falls on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's the economic development director position falls to the assistant town managers, but we don't have a single standalone economic development lead within the community, and I think it's something that we've talked about a number of times here and in the interview process. That I think if you're serious about economic development, that's where you put your money, right? So you have to show.
Look at
that
the
you're
advantages you have over the city of Worcester.
Yeah.
Talk tax rate. Every year, classification is a battle that the chamber loses badly.
Well, tax rate.
Cable rates. I mean,
Taxes
quality of
are
living,
going up.
School system.
The tax rate has gone down,
for 60 years. Yep.
but for 6 years.
Yep.
But the value of
Maybe.
the houses has gone up, so our property values have gone up, so our taxes are going up. There's nothing we can do about that.
No. Well,
The advantage is we're in a great place, so our values of our property go up, but yet the tax rate's gone down.
Yep.
hey, look, we're an affluent community.
Right.
I mean, that's part of the price for being an affluent community, okay? And, I mean, look, they're building houses now where my dad used to hunt. Okay? It's not by accident that we're, 80-20 residential, commercial, industrial?
Yeah, 87-13.
Yeah,
actually,
I mean, that's not by accident. People, for a long time, wanted it that way. And they desired an affluent neighborhood, and they were willing to pay for the school systems and the services. And other than Route 9, they weren't interested in actually attracting or seducing or having business. I think that's changed a little bit.
We want more revenue.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Now, the Spags development was a grand slam.
that was great.
I never envisioned, as a kid, I used to work there. First of all, it was just amazing, once the building was demolished, how huge that footprint was.
Yeah.
but I don't think anyone's left there, right? I mean, I don't see any. Occasionally I go to Burton's, and are there any vacant places that left?
Qdoba left.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
that's,
there's
I think,
one
the only one.
Well, you're gonna have always some attrition, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But the other shops are very vibrant. I've been
Yeah.
in Atlantic Poke on a Friday afternoon. You can't find a seat. I mean, it's the restaurants are thriving.
Whole Foods, it's amazing.
Hard to find parking.
Parking,
Yep,
it's always full. The lot's always full.
absolutely.
I mean, I suppose there's always the hope of Route 20, right?
Right. Yeah, and we are focused on that with putting sewer infrastructure in
Yeah.
there, which is will hopefully increase the intensity of the use on some of those lots where they're kind of just parking trailers. Honestly.
Yeah.
We love having the businesses in the community, but they're better. That's a major corridor across the state, and we think we can take advantage of it and find some growth in that. And hopefully the Edgemere drive-in redevelopment will be a key jumping off point for that whole corridor, and we'll continue to sewer that area. We'll start our main sewer work, $6.5 million of improvements this coming spring. That will tie us into the city of Worcester sewer system, alleviate some pressure at the Westboro treatment plant, and allow us to be able to absorb growth in a sustainable way in that corridor. So,
Were you surprised when you arrived about the quality and the level of citizen engagement
yes.
in this community? I mean, I know it varies from community to community, and I'm
Yeah.
sure, Leicester had their, core group of community activists
Yeah.
and Grafton, but it's almost legacy in Shrewsbury. There's been some families that, for decades,
Yep.
I mean, the Zona family comes to my mind real quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, Flo and John, Bobby, Henry, okay, John
Jack.
Sr. and Jack. I mean, it was like a family legacy. Friends we've had that sort of like, I call it quiet public service. Mike DeRico.
Yeah.
He left the fire department, unfortunately came back willing to serve, Vietnam vet, but there's a certain legacy type of activism. Isn't it like a de facto talent pool for you?
Yeah, it's a wonderful benefit to have, and it's not only long-standing and tradition. You see that in a lot of communities, but the skill sets and the careers and the perspective that you get when you talk to people. And I have, a unique position where people want to come in and share their knowledge with me. Dr. Harding, pediatrician that had a practice in town for a long time, came in to talk to me about his perspective on water once we announced PFAS, to tell me about his conversations with Mr. Carney whenever the VOCs were found. So having people that are just willing to share and say, you're doing the right thing, it's a tough decision, you got to push through this, you got to keep fighting on it. Here's my perspective, here's who I talk to, here's what you should read. That's huge. I mean, honestly, that level of consultation for free that you get, I couldn't even pay for that, in another setting. So it's a true asset. Keeps you sharp and keeps you up to date, and I feel much better being able to do my job because of that counsel that I get from so many different people.
So 2 years now, you're no longer the new guy on the block. That's from my perspective.
18 to go. Takes 20.
But now that you've been here that time, is there anything that you look back and say, geez, you know what, that surprised me? I didn't, look, you're a very thoughtful guy. I mean, I'm sure you did your due diligence, but was there something that I didn't anticipate this, or this is better than I expected, or this is worse than I expected?
So
We'll take a pass and say none of the above.
yeah, no. So it's good. I mean, I think my perspective, I feel maybe I was, I made a couple assumptions on how Dan ran the show, within the town hall. And as I said before, nothing wrong, just different perspective than I have, and different thoughts, different era of schooling, different, things dealing with, technology and infrastructure on those fronts. So that was surprised me. So some of the cultural changes that I have to make, or we're in the process of working through at the town hall and throughout all the departments, I didn't necessarily perceive that. No two managers are alike. So I thought Dan and I were a little more alike in the management styles, but again, it's just two different people. And then, I think that the vastness, so the scope, right? So I understood all the departments And
What was your budget
the
last
difference
time,
are,
Kevin?
I mean, the budget in Leicester was $32 million.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we're 142. And you think you understand what that is until you sit in the chair and you realize your DPW is a $23 million business within the organization. And then there's Selco, sits outside the organization, but that's another 50 on top of that 142. And so you can really start to see a corporation that exists here versus, small 1 or 2 member departments. So that's a bigger challenge. It's you drink through the fire hose for a couple weeks in any other position, but there's so much coming at you sitting in the town manager's seat in Shrewsbury. It'll never change. You talk, it's 40,000, it's a city. People still expect to operate like a 10,000 population community, though. We want to keep it that way. We want to continue to provide those
That's
level of
delicate
services.
surgery. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
But it's tough. You know what I mean? Sometimes we have to. We can't. The DPW director can't come out of his office and answer a question on a plan. Yes, we do have to get. There's other things going on. You don't want to say that, but that's the reality of the scope of work and the operation that we're running.
Very good friend of mine, Randy Override, campaigned in the campaign in Framingham to go from town to city. And there were 75,000 people that had represented town meeting. It went for decades. And it was 51-49. And some people wouldn't let it go. And I won't, we'll say John. John was in a unique position. He wasn't an elected official, but I mean, it just, he thought this would be a slam dunk. People would realize, we're a damn city. We got to act like a city. Okay, we got to be run like a city. And trying to take representative town meeting was like trying to take a cookie off a 4-year-old's plate.
Yeah.
It divided the town.
Changing
I'm
culture.
not suggesting he wants to change to a city. Okay, but I mean, the challenge is as you get bumped up to 40,000, there's city challenges. I mean, you have urban problems that other small communities don't have.
Right.
Like traffic?
Yeah, I mean, traffic's building. Just the general welfare of the population and social emotional needs, community. I mean, that's everywhere, but it is. It's there's more of it, and we need to address it, and people expect us to address it. They like the small town feel, but expect the city services. Obviously, I'm passionate about professional local government management. If I have any criticism of the move in Framingham is that they didn't keep a city manager to help the mayor. I really think that independent local government managers are the way to go. City of Worcester has a great model.
You are so right on that.
Yeah.
That's where they missed the mark.
Yeah, Worcester has it.
Yeah. And
Yep.
I mean, you know what? It works fabulously in Worcester. I mean, Joe Petty does the ceremonial stuff very well. People love him. He's competent. He doesn't, but he lets Ed Augustus is the manager.
Right.
Ed Augustus runs the departments, just like Michael O'Brien and other people. I mean, the way it should run. That's the only missing ingredient. They just missed that. Because as we know, in elected office, sometimes the best person doesn't always win.
Do you think that will change in Framingham?
There's some discussion about that. I know a couple of city councils who have decided, I'm not running.
Really?
Okay, this is ridiculous. But I mean, so.
And we're not there yet.
Well, there's 2 solutions. Okay, it's tinker with the change. Hey, we missed this. Okay. Or like someone who has the experience to be mayor and also run a city. But one's a political skill, and one's a management skill. I mean, you have political skills, obviously. You don't go to 3 communities and survive. But you shouldn't have to. You don't campaign for the job.
Right.
Because once you start campaigning for the job, you're making concessions. You should have a constituency of 5, and 40,000 other people are going to judge it de facto. That's not what's happening in Framingham. It's been a disaster.
And our big issue now is the trash bag cost and price.
Is that going up again?
It's the first time. It's going up since 2008.
Why do you always complain about this? You put more in one bag than I do in 4. Okay.
You bet. And if you put the wrong thing in our trash, my husband will take it out.
You even count the bags to make certain that you're not getting gypped.
It's amazing. And it's just a game in my house. you know, did you use the garbage disposal? Why didn't you put it in the
How's the
bucket?
new recycling system going on? The on again, off again. You know, bottles 1 week. Is that?
Yeah, it seems to be becoming more.
There's no perfect solution,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, that really, you know, I just go back to, so whether, you know, we hope it's not an inconvenience. I've heard good and bad. You know, we're still early in the process, not even 6 months in yet. It really saves the town money. There's really, you know, $140,000 keeping it commingled, doing it alternating weeks. Saves the town a huge amount of money with the recycling market as it is. You know, the recycling market isn't this free thing that sits on the side that if you throw it in the blue container instead of putting it in the blue bag, that all of a sudden it goes from, you know, costing you money to free to the town. It's not recycling. It may have never should have been that way, but that's, you know, when pay as you throw was implemented, that's how it was sold, and it did a good job. But recycling market is changing because of, you know, overseas changes in their market and willingness to buy, and now it costs us money to get rid of recycling.
Yeah.
And
How are the trucks? Are the routes? Is it smoothing out?
so we rebalanced the routes starting October 21st, and it went really smooth. I'm very, very pleased. We're almost a month into that. So we had like, you know, a big day where we were picking up 3,000 households on Thursday, and Monday was like 1,000, and now every day is 2,000 households. We threw residents, or we gave them a lot of information, and we think that worked out really well. Didn't have a spike in complaints, and hopefully that becomes the new norm for folks.
And there's a lot of red trucks coming through. Like they must be rental trucks?
Yeah, so, you know, Waste Management ordered new trucks specifically for Shrewsbury that will be here after the first of the year.
Oh.
It's, you know, a year lead time to build a trash truck because of the demand, and
Like a fire truck?
yeah, it does. It takes a long time, but, you know, the new trucks will be what we told folks from the beginning. They'll have trash on one side, recycling on another, so we'll only be down the street once. They have had to rent some to, you know, make sure they had quality equipment, and we're able to complete the routes. And we're in the midst of lawn and leaf collection, and, you know, I think we've collected, 62 tons already this week. So
As
Kevin,
soon
are
as
there-
you
are there any-
collect it, go ahead.
Are there any metrics that would indicate what the percentage of households are actually recycling? I mean, is there any ballpark number? Is it 60, 70, or is
how
this?
many are recycling generally?
Yeah,
I think
our rate. I mean, is it?
It's very high.
It
I
is.
mean, I would think.
Do you recycle?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good.
I would
And
think
I just brought a hybrid, okay? My environmental credentials are intact, sweetheart.
Good.
I would think that we're in the 90%
Good.
recycling. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
My wife has to remind me, okay, no, it's bottles this week,
Yep.
paper next week, okay?
Exactly.
But it's you know, it's funny. You were talking about DC, and we do a lot of environmental work in my company. You know, and it's amazing to me. I was in DC earlier this week in our Washington office, and we're doing this campaign on some environmental initiatives, and how amazing, you know, all of a sudden the environment's become a partisan issue. And one of my colleagues, he was Joe, let me remind you about something. And he goes, I don't know why it is either. And some of these enviros are just amazing with their recall. He said, who signed the EPA Act? I said, Richard Nixon.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He said, who brought us national parks? Teddy Roosevelt.
Yep.
Yeah. And time's
He
up.
said, you know, the Water Quality Act, signed by a Republican president. He said, where did this become a partisan issue? The Republicans own this issue. I said,
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.